Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into our latest polling roundup. So we're going to be going through more opinion polls that have been released in the past 24 hours for the general election, just 2 weeks away now from the July the 4th general election. Now I shall go through those polls for you in a moment. We've seen a couple of quite dramatic ones, so more about that in a second. Just say, but if you enjoy the vlogs on the channel at the moment, please like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. Right, okay, well, let's have a look at some of these polls. We're at the opinion poll page at Wikipedia here. So let's deal with people polling first of all. That appeared just after I released last night's polling roundup video. So a people poll for GB News turned up around 8 o'clock this time yesterday evening. Dramatic poll, this one. They had the Conservatives down to just 15%. Labour were down to just 35%. Significant fall for Labour as well. Liberal Democrats were on 12%. SNP were on 3%, the Greens were on 8%, and look at Reform surging to 24%. That is an overall Labour lead from Labour to Reform, not Labour to Conservative, but Labour to Reform of 11% there. With people polling, very, very dramatic poll. If I can find the last people polling poll, where is it? Come on, people polling, where are you? You must be there somewhere, so I doubt I'm going to be able to find it, actually. So many polls during this general election. I think this will be the most polled general election that we've seen, so I would assume that must be it there from the 16th of May. Now, then they have the Conservatives on 20%, so Conservatives were down 5 with this people poll, I think. People polling had Labour on 46%, so Labour seemed to be down 11, I think, with this people poll. Is that right? That seems like what a heck of a drop. I don't know, but so Conservatives down 5, Labour down 11, Liberal Democrats up 4, no change I don't think for the SNP. Not sure about the Greens, they were on 8%, what are they on? Now let's come up to so no change for the Greens, and then Reform in that people poll we're on 14. Now they have gone up on the latest people poll 24. So it's Conservatives down 5, Labour down 11, and Reform up 10 on that people polling poll, and the Liberal Democrats up 4. Very, very dramatic movements with that one. It looks like it's a complete outlier, I have to say, within the rest of the opinion polls. But, you know, you have to take it on board. It is another poll, but to talk about and to analyse. YouGov has also turned up today. They have the Conservatives on 20%, Labour down to 36%, Liberal Democrats on 14%, they've got the SNP on 3%, Greens on 7%, and Reform on 18% in this YouGov poll. Now, compared to the last YouGov, well, this is the YouGov MRP, but let's compare it back to the last standard YouGov poll, if we can find that, which is just there, YouGov for Sky News, and then they had Conservatives on 18%, so Conservatives up to Labour 38% in that YouGov poll. They are now 36%, so Labour down 2. What about Reform? 17%, so Reform are up 1. More in Common has been released today as well, with the Conservatives on 25%, Labour on 39%. It does appear to be a bit of a drop in the Labour share that's going on here, from around below 40s into the high 30s, I think. Liberal Democrats on 11%, SNP on 3%, Greens on 5%, Reform on 14%. Then we've had Norstat just here. They have the Conservatives on 20%, Labour on. By the way, that's an overall Labour lead of 14%. That we see there with the More in Common poll. 16% was the Labour lead with YouGov, and I say 11% with People Polling. Norstat has Conservatives on 20%, Labour on 40%, Liberal Democrats 12%, SNP 3%, Greens 5%, Reform 19%, overall Labour lead of 20%. BMG has appeared today as well. They've got the Conservatives on 19%, tied with Reform on 19%, Labour on 42%, Liberal Democrats on 9%, SNP 3%, Greens 7%, overall Labour lead of 23%, and then a Red Bill Wilton poll has appeared today as well, showing Conservatives on 18%, Labour on 42%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, SNP on 3%, Greens on 5%, and Reform on 19%, Reform ahead of the Conservatives in that Red Bill Wilton poll. Overall Labour lead of 23% there. So, I mean, we are seeing quite a bit of variation with these opinion polls. I think we can, kind of rule out the People Polling poll for the time being, showing Labour just with an 11% lead and at 35%. But, some of these other polls, YouGov, More in Common, they have got Labour dipping down into the sort of upper 30s anyway. Does appear that there's a bit of a reduction in the Labour vote share that's going on here. However, the Conservatives are also reducing as well. So roughly the 20% gap is still being maintained with most of these pollsters. But we are seeing quite a bit of scatter. Certainly at the moment, no herding going on between these pollsters. You do tend to find that when you get towards the end of the general election campaign, most of the opinion polls start to sort of herd together and come to very similar conclusions. At the moment, we're not seeing, all that much sign of that. In the past week, we've had Labour lead as high as 27% and as low as 11%. And I suspect the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, like around a 20% lead, as it has been. This is how the overall polling graph is looking. So again, we still see Labour's trend line dropping and the Conservative trend line dropping as well. Still roughly a 20% gap being maintained. Reform's trend line is continuing to lift up, and Liberal Democrats also having a small tick up. Greens and SNP not moving greatly, really. Yes, so it's very, very interesting what's going on with this election. Obviously, the Conservatives are still in very, very, very deep trouble. That's like the main, storyline of the general election. It appears there's a bit of drift going on from Labour, possibly to the Liberal Democrats through tactical voting. And I suspect there's probably a little bit of Labour to Reform going on in the red wall as well. There doesn't, though, appear to be any noticeable or discernible Labour to Conservative switch, which is the key thing, for preventing or stopping a Labour taking power. So, Labour supporters, yes, you are wobbling a little bit. I think your party's wobbling a little bit, but nothing to be overly concerned about at this stage. If we were to start seeing an actual sort of Labour to Conservative drift back or swing back, then it would start to get a little bit more concerning for Labour and Labour supporters. But I would say at the moment, we're seeing quite a bit of churn, seeing quite a bit of uncertainty appearing within the polls. But the broad picture remains as it has been, which is still that 20% gap being maintained between Labour and the Conservatives, which means that Labour is still on course for a very significant, if not landslide, majority. But we shall see how it all works out. Still got a couple of weeks of a campaign to go, so, I wouldn't think Labour will want to drop much more than this. I wouldn't think, if they start dropping into the low 30s, mid to low 30s with some of these pollsters, then they might just start to get slightly anxious. But at the moment, I don't think there's too much to worry about for Labour. All the concern remains as it has been with the Conservatives. Right, we'll see how it all works out in the next couple of weeks. Anyway, we'll do the next polling roundup for you. I would have thought that will be coming up on Saturday. There's not normally many polls released on a Friday, so I reckon the next polling roundup will probably be on Saturday night. But if you enjoy this polling roundup, please like, share, subscribe. Make sure you do that, and we'll be back with more very soon. But for this one, that's all for now, and thanks so much.